Nia had spent weeks planning the perfect anniversary party. 8 years with Kelvin felt like something worth celebrating in grand style, and nothing less than the best rooftop hotel in Nairobi would do. The night sky was sprinkled with stars, the warm air alive with the soft glow of fairy lights strung across the terrace. A live band played smooth jazz, and the city skyline sparkled below like it was part of the celebration. Guests arrived dressed to impress, their laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. Everywhere Nia turned, she was greeted with hugs, compliments, and admiration. People whispered about how stunning she looked in her fitted gold gown, how glamorous the night felt. For a moment, she allowed herself to soak it in. This was her night. Kelvin stood by her side, looking sharp in his tailored suit, but something about him felt off. When people spoke to him, his smile seemed a little too quick, his laughter a little too light, as if he wasn't really there. At times, she noticed his gaze drifting away from the conversations, his phone lighting up more often than she liked. She brushed it off, telling herself he was just tired from work. Still, the little things began to stack up. His distracted nods when she talked, the way his hand slipped from hers faster than usual. Nia told herself not to overthink. Tonight was supposed to be about love, about celebration, about them. But somewhere deep in her chest, a quiet unease had begun to stir. Nia floated through the crowd with her champagne glass in hand, smiling and greeting everyone like the perfect hostess. She stopped to chat with an old school friend, then moved to a group of Kelvin's colleagues, laughing politely at their jokes. But as she made her way from one group to another, she began to notice something odd. There was a pattern in the way people looked. It wasn't just the admiring glances at her dress or the warm smiles for the couple of the night. These glances were different, quicker, sharper, like people were passing along a secret. At first, she thought she was imagining it. Parties always came with a bit of gossip. Maybe someone had had too much wine or a celebrity guest had arrived. But then she noticed the whispers. Not the happy kind that comes with excitement, but the hushed kind where voices drop and eyes dart toward the same spot. She couldn't tell what, or who, they were looking at, but it sent a tiny chill down her spine. Her best friend, Wanjiru, was standing near the bar, watching Nia approach. Normally, Wanjiru would be all smiles, ready to whisper something funny in her ear. Tonight, her smile was tight, her eyes holding something back. Nia tilted her head, silently asking if everything was fine. Wanjiru hesitated for a second, her lips parting like she wanted to say something, then closed them again. Instead, she reached for her drink and looked away. That was strange. Wanjiru wasn't the type to hold back, especially with her. The band started playing a romantic tune, and someone called out for Nia to join a photo. She let herself be pulled into the center, posing with a practiced smile as the camera flashed. Still, even as people clapped and laughed, she caught more of those sideways looks in the crowd. She wanted to march over and ask what was going on, but that would be ridiculous, wouldn't it? This was her anniversary, a night she'd dreamed about. Surely her mind was just looking for shadows where there were none. She took a slow sip of champagne and told herself to let it go. People talk at parties. Sometimes they whisper about nothing. She was Nia, the woman of the hour, the one everyone had come to celebrate. If she kept smiling, maybe the uneasy feeling would fade. But it didn't. Somewhere beneath the music and the laughter, she could still feel it. That hum of quiet conversations she wasn't part of, the sideways glances she couldn't explain. And even though she tried to push it down, the question kept tugging at her heart. What was everyone looking at? Nia needed a moment to breathe. The rooftop was buzzing with laughter and music, and the warmth of the crowd felt suddenly heavy on her skin. She slipped away from a group mid-conversation, weaving through waiters carrying trays of champagne, and found herself near the edge of the terrace where a smaller balcony branched off. It was quieter here, away from the bright lights and camera flashes. She thought she might stand there for a minute, look out at the city, and calm the strange knot in her chest. But the moment she stepped onto the balcony, her feet stopped cold. There he was. Kelvin, her husband, the man she had celebrated, defended, and loved for 8 years. And he wasn't alone. Pressed up against him was a younger woman, maybe mid-20s, in a red silk dress that clung to her body like it had been made for her. Her hand was curled in his hair, his arm locked tightly around her waist. They were kissing, deeply, urgently, like no one else in the world existed. Nia could see the curve of the woman's smile against his lips, the way his hand slid lower down her back. The sounds of the city seemed to vanish. The laughter and music from inside became nothing but a dull hum in the distance. Even the lights of Nairobi, usually so alive, blurred into meaningless smears of color. Nia's heart was thudding so loud she could hear it in her ears, but her face felt numb, frozen. For a split second, she thought she might walk away, pretend she hadn't seen it, save herself from this moment searing itself into her memory. But then another thought took hold, sharp and clear. She wasn't going to be the blind, silent wife. Not tonight. Her hand moved slowly into her clutch. She pulled out her phone, careful not to make a sound. The screen lit up faintly in her palm, and she opened the camera, her fingers trembling so much she had to tighten her grip to steady it. She hit record. Through the lens, she caught every detail: the glint of the fairy lights on the red silk, Kelvin's hand gripping the woman's waist, the tilt of his head as he kissed her again like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Her breath came slow, controlled. Her body might have been shaking, but her eyes were cold now, almost detached. If he could betray her so openly, she could expose him just as clearly. When she had enough, she lowered the phone and stood there for another second, watching them, not out of pain anymore but out of something harder: resolve. She turned and walked back toward the party, her gold gown trailing behind her, the recording safe in her hand like a loaded weapon she wasn't afraid to use. The noise of the party hit Nia like a wave as she stepped back inside, but it felt different now. The music was still playing, people were still laughing, glasses still clinked, but it was as if she was watching it all from somewhere far away. Her mind was no longer here on the rooftop. It was back in every moment that had led to this night, every little sign she had ignored. She thought about the countless late-night business meetings Kelvin claimed he couldn't miss, the dinners she ate alone at their dining table while his chair sat empty. She remembered the way he would step out onto the balcony to take certain calls, speaking in a low voice, then returning with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. She thought about the text messages that had popped up on his phone, names she didn't recognize, messages he quickly deleted before she could read them. Every time she had asked, he'd been ready with an excuse, a laugh, a kiss on the forehead. And every time, she'd let it slide, telling herself she was being paranoid. Now the truth wasn't hidden anymore. It was burned into her mind in the image of him holding that woman in red, kissing her like the love they once had belonged to someone else now. Her chest felt heavy, but it wasn't just heartbreak filling it anymore. Something else was pushing its way in, hot, sharp, unshakable. This wasn't just pain. This was power waking up inside her. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on Kelvin in the distance. He was talking to a guest, laughing, looking like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just destroyed 8 years in a single kiss. She felt her hand curl tighter around her phone in her clutch, the video inside it burning like a secret ready to explode. The old version of Nia, the one who would have swallowed her pain to keep the peace, was gone. Tonight wasn't going to end with her going home, crying into her pillow, and pretending in the morning. No, tonight, she was going to make sure he felt the same shock, the same humiliation, the same sting of betrayal she had felt on that balcony. She could already feel the words forming in her head, the way she would stand in front of everyone and tell the truth. Not just to him, but to every guest who had come to celebrate them. If Kelvin wanted to play this game, she was going to make sure she wrote the ending. Her heart was still beating hard, but her breathing slowed. Her eyes locked on him again, and a calm, icy determination settled over her. He thought this was their anniversary. He had no idea it was about to become something else entirely. Tonight, she would not be the silent, humiliated wife. Tonight, she would be the storm. The host announced it was time for speeches, and all eyes turned toward the happy couple. Nia felt every gaze on her as she rose from her seat. Her heels clicked softly against the floor as she walked to the stage, the gold of her gown catching the fairy lights. Kelvin followed her with his eyes, smiling that charming smile he used when he wanted the world to believe everything was perfect. He thought she was going to thank him, tell some sweet story, maybe make the crowd laugh before they toasted. She took the microphone, her fingers steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice warm but clear. The crowd quieted instantly. "First, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. It means so much to celebrate 8 years of marriage with all our friends, family, and colleagues. It's truly special." Kelvin's smile widened, but there was a flicker in his eyes. Nerves, maybe. He shifted in his seat, glancing at the projector screen behind her, probably wondering if she had prepared a slideshow. Nia paused for a heartbeat, letting the silence fill the room. Then her tone shifted, just slightly. "They say every marriage has its stories, the good ones, the hard ones, and the ones you never forget. Tonight, I want to share one of those stories with you." She reached into her clutch and pulled out her phone. With one tap, the screen behind her lit up. The music faded, the air seemed to thin, and then there it was. Kelvin, the woman in the red silk dress. That kiss. The same one Nia had filmed less than an hour ago. Gasps ripped through the room. The band stopped playing. Some people covered their mouths. Others turned sharply to look at Kelvin. On the stage, Nia didn't flinch. She stood there, one hand holding the mic, the other resting lightly against her hip, her eyes fixed on the crowd. The video played for a few seconds, long enough for every detail to sink in. Kelvin's face drained of color. He stood halfway, as if he might rush the stage, but froze under the weight of 100 stares. When the screen went dark, Nia's voice cut through the silence. 8 years, she said slowly, and this is the gift I get tonight. But I thought it would be selfish to keep it all to myself. After all, good things should be shared. A ripple of shocked murmurs spread through the crowd. Nia didn't look at Kelvin. She didn't need to. She knew everyone else was already doing it for her. Thank you for celebrating with us, she added, her voice cool, steady. But as you can see, the story isn't quite what it seemed. She stepped back from the mic, her phone still in hand, the air thick with the kind of tension no one would ever forget. For a moment, the rooftop was frozen in complete silence. Then it hit, an explosion of gasps, sharp whispers, and low murmurs that rolled through the crowd like a wave. People turned in their seats, craning their necks to get a better look at Kelvin, their faces shifting from confusion to disgust. A few guests actually stood up, their chairs scraping the floor, as if they needed distance from him. Kelvin sat stiffly, his hands pressed against his knees, eyes darting around the room. His once confident smile was gone. His face was pale, his jaw tight. You could see him searching for an escape, for a way to explain. But there was no talking his way out of what everyone had just seen. Some guests shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered furiously to the person next to them, their eyes wide. A woman near the front muttered something under her breath, and the man beside her clenched his jaw like he wanted to say it out loud. The tension was thick enough to choke on. And then, from the corner of the room, movement. The young woman in the red silk dress. She was trying to slip out quietly, her head down, clutching a small purse against her side. Her heels clicked fast against the floor as she moved toward the exit, hoping she could vanish before too many people recognized. Nia's eyes followed her, and a slow, cold smile tugged at her lips. She lifted the microphone again. Leaving so soon, Monica? Her voice cut clean through the noise, slicing the air like glass. Every head in the room turned toward the woman. Monica froze mid-step, her back to the crowd. Slowly, reluctantly, she turned around. The bright red of her dress, which moments ago looked glamorous, now felt like a spotlight she couldn't escape. People began to murmur her name under their breath, as if committing it to memory. Don't be shy, Nia continued, her tone steady and controlled. You've already been part of the show. No reason to hide now. A ripple of awkward laughter moved through the guests, but it wasn't the warm, friendly kind. It was sharp, almost cruel, the kind that says we see you. Monica's eyes flicked toward Kelvin, desperate for some kind of rescue, but he just stared at the floor, avoiding her completely. The silence that followed was heavier than anything that had come before. Monica's chest rose and fell quickly, and for a second it looked like she might say something. But she didn't. She turned and walked out, her head high but her steps a little too fast, the echo of her heels following her out the door. Nia watched her go, the microphone still in her hand, the room still hanging on her every word. The balance of the night had shifted. Kelvin wasn't just caught. He was exposed, stripped of the image he had so carefully built. And everyone in that room would remember exactly how it happened. The room was still buzzing after Monica's exit, but Nia didn't let the energy fade. She stood tall on the stage, holding the microphone like it was an extension of her will. Her gaze swept over the crowd, friends, family, colleagues, strangers, all staring at her as if waiting for the next blow. She took a slow breath, her voice steady when she spoke. I know you all came here tonight for an anniversary celebration. 8 years of marriage. That's what the invitation said. She paused, her eyes locking on Kelvin, who was still rooted in his seat, his face tight. But what you didn't know, she continued, is that tonight is not just about our anniversary. Tonight is my liberation day. A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. Some people looked shocked, others looked impressed. Nia didn't flinch. For years, she said, I have stood by my husband's side. I have supported him, believed in him, defended him. And in return, I got lies late nights, and now, she motioned toward the projector screen. This. Her voice didn't break. It didn't even waver. So tonight, I'm choosing something different. I'm choosing me. She reached into her clutch one more time and pulled out a crisp white envelope. Inside were neatly signed divorce papers. She walked to the edge of the stage, heels clicking against the polished floor, and handed them directly to Kelvin. The room held its breath. Kelvin looked at the envelope, but didn't reach for it right away. His hands stayed still in his lap, as if touching it would make it real. Finally, almost mechanically, he took it from her. His fingers tightened on the paper, his jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Nia turned back to the crowd, her voice smooth and controlled. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. This is awkward, this is uncomfortable. But let me tell you, it's a lot less uncomfortable than living with betrayal and pretending it's love. There was a soft gasp from somewhere in the back. Someone else clapped once, sharply, before stopping. The tension was thick, but Nia's calm presence seemed to hold it together. She smiled, not the polite, forced smile of earlier, but something real, almost light. So, the celebration will go on, she said, her eyes scanning the guests. There's food, there's music, there's a view of this beautiful city. Please enjoy yourselves. Just know the guest list is one person shorter. A few people laughed quietly, but it wasn't unkind. It was the laugh of people who had just witnessed something they'd never forget. Nia handed the microphone back to the host, stepped down from the stage, and walked through the crowd with her head high. The fairy lights shimmered above her, the band started up again, and the rooftop came back to life, without Kelvin. By the next morning, Nia's phone was blowing up. The video of her on stage, cool, confident, and exposing Kelvin's betrayal, had spread across social media like wildfire. Someone had filmed the whole thing from the moment she took the microphone to when she handed him the divorce papers. In less than 12 hours, it had been viewed millions of times. People were sharing it with captions like, "This is how you leave with dignity," and "Queen Energy." Clips of the moment ran on TV news and entertainment shows. Talk show hosts sat around polished tables, debating whether what she did was bold or brutal, while the audience clapped and cheered. Most called it bravery, a rare moment when a woman refused to be humiliated quietly. A few said it was too public, too harsh, but even those segments got her more attention. On Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, her name was trending. Women from all over Kenya, and even from other countries, were flooding her inbox with long, heartfelt messages. They told her about their own heartbreaks, the times they had been cheated on or lied to, and how they wished they had spoken up the way she did. Some said her courage had given them the strength to leave toxic relationships. Others simply called her an inspiration. Her DMs weren't just full of personal stories, they were full of opportunities. Clothing brands wanted her to wear their designs. A jewelry company offered to create a custom liberation piece named after her. A skincare brand pitched a campaign about self-love and resilience, with her as the face of it. She read the offers one by one, a mix of surprise and quiet satisfaction curling inside her. The media labeled her the woman in gold after the gown she had worn that night, and the nickname stuck. Every time she scrolled, she saw people reposting stills of her on stage, standing tall under the fairy lights, her gold dress glowing as she spoke into the microphone. It had become a symbol, proof that a woman could reclaim her power in the exact moment someone tried to take it away. Kelvin, on the other hand, stayed silent. His company released a vague statement about respecting privacy during personal matters, but that didn't stop the memes from pouring in. Screenshots of his shocked face on stage were turned into jokes and quotes. His reputation had taken a hit, and everyone knew it. By the end of the week, Nia's follower count had tripled. Interviews were being requested left and right, and her friends joked that she had gone from heartbroken wife to national icon overnight. She read every message, every headline, and every offer, not with arrogance but with a deep, steady awareness. Her life had already changed. The rooftop party was over, but the stage she had stepped onto that night had only just begun. The divorce moved faster than Nia expected. Kelvin, already drowning in public shame, didn't drag it out. The settlement was generous, partly because she had proof, partly because he wanted it over. Along with the new business collaborations pouring in from brands who admired her courage, Nia suddenly had the kind of financial freedom she'd never imagined. But instead of spending it all on herself, she began to think about the women who had filled her inbox with their own stories. Some were still stuck in loveless, toxic marriages. Some wanted to leave but had no money, no support, no plan. She thought about the fear in their words, the quiet hopelessness between their lines. She remembered her own moments of doubt before the rooftop night. How many times she had almost convinced herself to stay silent. One afternoon, sitting by her window with a cup of tea, Nia wrote the first draft of what would become her next chapter, the Rise Foundation. Its mission was simple but powerful, to help women leave toxic marriages with dignity and resources. Not just legal advice, but financial planning, safe housing options, therapy, and career support. A full network to make sure no woman had to choose between freedom and survival. The first event was a small workshop in Nairobi, but word spread quickly. Women traveled from different counties to attend. Some came with nothing but a backpack and the courage to start over. Nia stood in front of them, not as a celebrity or the woman in gold, but as someone who had been in their shoes. She told them, leaving is not failure. Staying in a place that breaks you, that's the real loss. The foundation partnered with law firms willing to offer pro bono services, hotels that could provide safe temporary stays, and businesses ready to hire women starting over. Nia poured her energy into building this network. She met with survivors over tea, listened to their stories, and reminded them that they weren't alone. Every time she saw a woman walk out of her office with a signed lease for her own apartment, a new job offer, or simply the first real smile in years, Nia felt something in her own heart heal a little more. The press followed her journey, but this time, the attention wasn't about scandal, it was about impact. Newspapers ran headlines like From Betrayal to Empowerment and Nia's Foundation Changing Lives Across Kenya. Social media filled with photos of her hugging women, speaking at events, and handing over keys to new homes. Her own life looked nothing like it had before the rooftop night. She was busier, yes, but lighter. The gold dress was back in her closet, but she didn't need it to feel powerful anymore. Her power now came from something bigger, knowing she was turning her pain into a path for others to walk toward freedom. The night she had once thought would break her had, in truth, rebuilt her. 1 year later, the rooftop looked almost exactly the same. Fairy lights glowing against the Nairobi skyline, soft music floating in the warm night air. But this time, it wasn't an anniversary party. It was the Rise Foundation's first annual gala, and Nia was the host. The same place that had once held her worst heartbreak now carried the weight of her proudest achievement. She moved through the crowd in a sleek black gown, greeting guests who had flown in from across the country. There were business leaders, activists, celebrities, and most importantly, women whose lives the foundation had changed. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the night, but this time the energy was pure joy. When it was time for her speech, Nia stepped onto the stage, the very same spot where she had once stood with a trembling phone in her hand. Now, her posture was confident, her smile bright. She took the microphone and let the room fall silent. "A year ago," she began, "I stood here on a night I thought would break me. But what I didn't know then was that it was the beginning of something far greater. The stage you take after betrayal," she paused, letting her gaze sweep over the room, "can be the one that changes your life." The crowd erupted in applause, some standing, others wiping their eyes. Nia's voice stayed steady as she thanked the donors, volunteers, and survivors who made the foundation possible. When she stepped down, the applause followed her, wrapping around her like the warmest embrace. The rooftop had once been the scene of her pain. Now it was the stage of her victory.